Thanks for joining us for another edition of Cape Ann Today. It is Thursday, June 11th, 2020, and Heather and I are on a roll. We had a great chat today with Peggy Hegarty-Steck of Action.
Action Inc. She had a lot of really important information for people who are in need of rental or mortgage assistance. So Action Inc. has a program. It's funded by the Community Preservation Act, and you can listen to the interview to hear all about that. This is going to be more and more important for people because those $600 a week unemployment insurance checks are going to stop in July, and the state is going to lift the moratorium on evictions. So we're in for some rocky times, and Action Inc. is there to help.
So, Peggy, can you tell us about this new program of rental and mortgage assistance that Action Inc. is offering?
Sure. We have had rental and mortgage assistance in the past. And, you know, it's been in fits and spurts, and it's always a big need in the community. And so with the pandemic, communities have really stepped up to help support that. So in the communities of Manchester, Gloucester, and Ipswich, 3 new funds have been created. And I can go into those. For the Gloucester Fund, it was put through by the Community Preservation Committee, and it's an emergency rental only assistance program for folks at 80% of the area median income or less who have been affected by COVID-19. In Manchester, that was the first program, and it was put through by the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. And that program is for renters and mortgage holders who've been affected by, job loss and COVID, and that goes up to 100% of the area median income, so it covers a broader reach. In Ipswich, that's our newest one, and that was through their Affordable Housing Trust, and those funds are for folks at 80% as well, and each fund is $100,000 for rental assistance, which is tremendous, so we had some existing rental assistance funds, and those will go toward the folks in Essex and Rockport who don't yet have a resident-specific fund. But the way it works is, we help people maintain their housing. So if you've lost your job and you're struggling to pay the rent or pay your mortgage, as long as your income qualified, it doesn't, depending on which town you're in, doesn't matter whether you're a renter or an owner. And we help people stabilize their housing, stay in their housing, and work with people on budgeting and financial education. In this instance, it's a little different because it's not, everyone was hit from this outside source, with the job loss, and it's been so significant that it's not necessarily a how to manage your money issue. It's just this much larger thing happening in society. So we work with folks, and we also, in all these programs, assess them for other services so we can wrap around any other needs they might have, which, so if we can help them with food or heating bills or things like that, that offset, their rent burden, that's also helpful. So we are working with those communities, and we're really thankful for that. People were really quick acting in order to put that through, because sometimes those things can take a while. So all those communities, Manchester, Gloucester, and Ipswich really, stepped up quickly and were able to mobilize on their side of things so that we could get the money out the door and begin processing applications.
And I would love for you to just sort of explain the Community Preservation Act a little bit and why these funds are eligible for this housing assistance.
Sure. I'm not an expert, but with the Community Preservation Act, there's a set aside, there's different categories of things that it can pay for. And housing is one of them. So there's always a certain pot for housing, and it really depends on the applications that come in and what the committee awards in any given year. But sometimes, whether it's in historic preservation or open space or housing, there'll be funds that weren't used in the previous year. So there were funds available to go toward this. And the state was allowing for community preservation committees to use these housing funds for emergency rental and mortgage assistance. There was information that came down about that. So folks were made aware that that was a approved use, and people saw the need. And what it does is it keeps people housed, helps them stabilize until they can get back on their feet. And it prevents people from losing their housing and having to try to find somewhere new to live, which is, next to impossible right now. For someone to right now there's an eviction moratorium, but that will end, I believe, in August. So when that happens, all of a sudden, a lot of folks will be having to move and not having anywhere to move to. So if we can help people stabilize that tenancy, helps the landlord, it helps the tenant, and it helps reduce the number of people who potentially become homeless or who are in need of affordable housing that doesn't really exist right now in the volume that people need it. So it's a really good program. And some people, it is just, a bump in the road. It's not a long-term issue where they wouldn't be able to afford to stay there. They've had this temporary job loss, but if they know they're going to come back from furlough in August or September or whatnot, then we just need to help them get by in that interim period till they can get back to their, full-time work and be able to afford their rent going forward. So it's a short-term assistance program that helps kind of fill that gap for people.
And another gap that's another program that's helping right now is that $600 a week unemployment insurance, and that is due to expire in July, I believe.
Yes, yeah, right now, unless the HEROES Act passes and includes an extension, it will end in July. And that'll be, again, another wave, because folks have been getting more. Some folks have been getting more than they were earning if they were a lower wage worker. So when that hits, I think people will feel the pain, because that's really helped a lot of people over the past couple of months. And so that's a concern. And as I mentioned before, then in August, the eviction moratorium is another concern. And then when we go into the fall, if there's a second wave or a phase 2 of COVID on top of the flu and other things, that could be, again, a third wave. So trying to plan for that's a little harder because that's an unknown, and everyone's in the same boat in that case. But with unemployment, we know that's likely, and with the eviction moratorium, we know that's likely as well. So our staff are fully aware of that, and we're preparing to be able to handle that volume. It's been very, very busy, and we've been hiring another person because we've had such demand for services with a number of programs we're running in addition to the rental assistance. So we are gearing up to be able to meet that need for the community.
Kory, I know you have questions.
Yeah, Peg, do you have an update on the emergency shelter, which is currently operating out of the YMCA?
Yes. So thankfully, for the past few months, we've been able to co-locate with the Grace Center at the Cape Ann YMCA to help depopulate the shelter, which was really essential. I think one thing that's important for people to know is by doing that, by working with the city and the Y and the Open Door and the Grace Center and Essex County Community Foundation, which gave us some financial assistance in that work, we were able to have 0 guests become COVID positive. So we were able to keep people COVID free in a congregate setting, which is very challenging, as you know, from nursing homes and other types of environments. So it really made a big difference. And we were one of the first communities to act quickly. I was on a call last week with someone who runs a statewide organization, and they were saying Gloucester, Cape Ann was one of the first to do that. And that was why we didn't have that issue. In other shelters, there were fairly high percentages of COVID cases, and folks had to scramble to try to depopulate further on once there had been more community transmission, which makes it more difficult. So we're extremely grateful to the YMCA, to Tim Flaherty in particular, for working with us and the city to house us, because it was really critical. And I think people should feel really good about that. I know, all the details of things can get challenging, but in the big picture, that was like a really important move, and it took partnership for that to happen and to be successful. So we're really grateful to everybody who was involved in that. And we're getting ready to move back to our shelter July 6th. and the Grace Center we're coordinating with them around the planning because they do the day services. So they are planning on moving their services back on the same time frame. And we're working through all those details. We've been doing a lot at the shelter in terms of removing furniture, cleaning, setting up certain dividers and different things like that. We'll be down to 20 people. Normally we serve 30 at the shelter, but we have to stay semi-depopulated in order to be able to physically go back into that building and not have people be too close together. So it's difficult. It's an old building with a funky layout and things are tight. So that's the plan there. And we're just working again together with all those same partners to make that happen. And fingers crossed. Folks have gotten tested at this point. I think this week was our 5th time, and we've not had any guests or our staff be positive. So we're hoping to keep that streak going when we go back, and we're being really mindful. And we've had the city public health folks in too to just look at the facility and give us guidance just in case there's something we're missing, and that was really helpful. So we're getting ready for that move.
So I have a last question. Since we're on the question or the issue of housing, you have a project happening on Main Street in
Yes.
How is the Harbor Village construction going?
It's going really well. We've been able to work, thankfully, the timing of that construction schedule synced up well during the pandemic. The kind of work we were doing wasn't enclosed. There was a small group of folks working there. So we've been able to move forward. The only hangup has been steel, and that's again a bigger issue because of the pandemic. So we're maybe on our total schedule behind about 2 weeks, which I think is great considering. And we'll be doing advertising late August, early September for the lottery. So folks will be able to apply to the lottery in the fall of this year. The building won't be open until the end of May 2021, but the lottery process takes a while, and then the screening of applications and whatnot. So that's moving forward, and we've been really excited about that because it's nice to see something being able to go forward, especially around housing, because in a lot of communities that hasn't been possible because of the stage of the project, or the community had a construction shutdown or whatnot. So we're glad for that. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is our relief fund. We've raised so far over $350,000 for that relief fund, which gives direct cash assistance to people impacted by COVID. Originally, we started out with just hourly wage workers, but recently expanded it to self-employed folks as well. So to date, we've distributed $250,000 of the $350,000 to 250 households, and we're still going. But that ended up, our goal was 200,000, and we thought that was big. And so to have had people contribute so generously has been amazing. And again, that we worked with the city and the Chamber of Commerce on that. And all 100% of the funds are going directly to clients. There's no administrative fees or anything like that. We're just processing it all. Which again has been a big undertaking. It's been a lot, but to be able to give 250 households $1,000, we did a first payment of $500, and then because we raised more money, we did get a second payment, and we expanded to self-employed people just to try to broaden the reach. In the beginning, we just weren't sure how much we would get and how far it would go. So that's been a real success story too. I think people have been really generous. People have been generous at the shelter as well, providing dinners, hot dinners on the weekend, local restaurants, and our board members and folks in the community have sponsored takeout on the weekends when we need those additional things. But during the week, the Open Door has been fantastic, have been providing us with dinners every single day. And folks have had plenty to eat, and other people have, brought things in just as special extra things. So we've been fortunate in that way. People, in our community are super generous and very compassionate, and have really done a lot, especially I'd say around the shelter and around the relief fund to make sure that people are taken care of. So thanks to everybody for that, because that's made a huge difference.
So Heather, isn't it amazing how much Action has actually been doing for this community?
It really is. Yeah, that organization is incredible. But as Peggy said in the interview, this community is incredible. I mean, they've raised $350,000 for that relief fund, and they've distributed $250,000. It speaks to both Action and our community.
It's been one of the great eye openers from doing these interviews now for the past few months, is just how much of an impact Action is making on everybody's lives here every day, and most don't even realize it. So hats off to Peggy and the gang at Action Inc. You can learn more at 282-1000 or actioninc.org. We also spoke today with Taylor Bradford of the Gloucester Daily Times.
Yes, we talk to Taylor twice a week, and she always has a great update on what's happening in Gloucester. She's the reporter for the Gloucester Times in Gloucester, and she gives us the boots on the ground, day to day, what's happening. And you can hear her now.
3 big stories today. Take a look.
So the city was introduced to phase 2 this week as we kind of look at Governor Baker's 4-phase reopening plan for the state and how that impacts the city of Gloucester. So there's a couple big things that the city needs to know about as we're entering into this new phase, as it's kind of been indicated that there's going to be different steps within the phases as we slowly, integrate ourselves back into this new normal. So the things that are going to be opening up, given some restrictions, are restaurants, retail spaces, golf facilities, operators of lodging, outdoor recreation spaces. These are all very big things that I know people who've been cooped up at home are wanting to kind of get back out. I know I've been out in the city a little bit this weekend last and seeing restaurants finally have people sitting outside and start to kind of look like what summers usually are here in the city. So pretty exciting. And I had the opportunity to speak with some of the people who like to play out in our green spaces and talking about, street hockey and what that might look like this year. And really exciting stuff to especially look at how the city is really putting it upon the community members to take the initiative to, keep the hygienic practices that we've talked about all along and making sure that you keep the distance. They are, like, the tennis courts they're putting up, a net here, not a net here, a net there to kind of physically create that distancing. But they said they're not going to sanitize the playground structure, stuff like that, because the moment that someone touches them, it's going to be dirty again. So kind of looking at what's the city's responsibility and what's the community members' responsibility during this phase 2. And I know people are already eager for phase 3 as the CDC, the state, and our local health department kind of continue to release information. So that's what I've got for you guys on kind of the phase 2 and what it might look like. We're going to be having a couple stories this week and next that really hyper focus on each one of those bullet points. So what does it look like for hotels and restaurants, those open spaces? So really exciting stuff, but things that we still need to be kind of cautious of as the pandemic is still very much a thing here in the city and kind of beyond the bridges. So that's phase 2. Do you look at, do you want me to keep going to Gloucester Public Schools?
Go right ahead. You got it. Yeah. And we can press on those details when we talk to you next time about each parts of the phases. Yeah.
Sorry, new format.
Yeah.
So the City of Gloucester's public schools had some big announcement this week. Ben Lummis has been selected as the city's new superintendent of schools to kind of take the position of Dr. Richard Sapphire, who will be retiring at the end of this month as his kind of term has been set. And so really exciting, as this has been a really long process for the school committee and the public schools. They had a couple of timelines that got shifted around over the course of these days, over these months after Richard Sapphire kind of made his announcement earlier this past winter. A lot of people have been anticipating. They put, focus groups together, put out pamphlets and surveys, trying to kind of get the pulse of the city as they select one of the new administrative figures for our city. So really exciting stuff, and haven't been able to talk to Ben personally yet, but hoping to be able to talk to him. I know that he still has to sign a contract with the school committee before things are finalized, but as Monday night's kind of election kind of came about and the school committee voted 100% in favor for Ben, they said that they're very excited and that it's been a long time coming to finally have to select this person. The mayor, however, did have some words of kind of contention against the decision. She voted for Ben in the agreement for her staff members, but kind of did express her concerns about bringing in a new superintendent during such a tumultuous time, and saying that they're kind of in a state of chaos here in the city. And so instead of bringing someone new who might not know the city as well, why not request from Dr. Sapphire to continue his time until the pandemic has concluded. Again, she said, I understand that they have made this decision and that we need to kind of go forward, that they've decided that they need to go forward with selecting somebody. But she did express her concerns there. The thing about Ben is that when he came from the Brookline School, public schools, they also were kind of transitioning. He was the interim superintendent there, and so he had helped them transition into online remote learning. And so he has a knowledge of what does it mean to bring a school into, or a school district into kind of this online learning, and what that might look like for the schools come fall, as we already know that fall school year is not going to look the same for our children. And so hopefully the discussion will start to kind of formulate of what that might look like for the school district, and how Ben's new role will help move the city forward in a productive and effective direction. So that's what I have for the school. And then lastly, a really sad, but a story that I think really highlights the joys of Gloucester. So after 40 years, the Halibut Point Restaurant is closing. So Dennis Flavin, is owner, and he's been a kind of an iconic figure, an iconic restaurant for the city of Gloucester for so long. And at this point in time, he's saying that his time is up for him to own the restaurant, and so he's moving on. And a lot of people have expressed that you can't really do this because it's something that people love so much, and it's a part of Gloucester's history. But he kind of says that it's time to move on. So really, a bummer, as I know all of us really love the food there, and there's a lot of different memories that people have made at that restaurant. But he said that he's off to bigger things as he travels and kind of explores what's next for him personally. So.
Yeah, I think he tried to close that restaurant maybe 8 or 9 years ago and offer it to his daughter and her husband. And the city just said, you are not allowed to do it. We need that burger. So I think Dennis probably found an easy out. He didn't have to face anybody with the COVID closures, right? He could just say, we'll just call it a day. But we wish him the best. Do you think that there will be any other plans for that restaurant? Any whispers about that?
No, I'm not quite sure this time. I know maybe it'll change ownership or what that might look like. But, at this time, it's really up in there, especially during COVID-19, as they're trying to, navigate who wants to take on a restaurant during this time that you have to navigate all of those different things. So definitely discussions being made, I am sure. But
it is Blackburn's saloon. I mean, they're historic. Yeah. There's historic issues there, right? So somebody should be taking that on. Maybe we can get the Cape Ann Museum to purchase it.
I know the first time I went to the Halibut Point Restaurant, I was actually looking for Halibut Point reservation, and I pulled up. I put in my GPS and I pulled up, and I was like, "This is not a reservation," and I got food there, and it was so good. And so, it's definitely a part of the city, and whether you're going to the reservation or food, I know both are loved by the city in different ways. So.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Taylor, for the week updates, and we look forward to talking to you next week, as always.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks. I have to say that Halibut Point closing is just a very emotional experience for me, and I know people all over the city feel that way. But also, it was Howard Blackburn's saloon, and that we can't let that those doors just close forever, right? I really hope some great entrepreneurial spirit moves in there.
Yeah, I think they still have the original register from the Blackburn Tap from back in the day. They're right behind the bar there too. So yeah, cool stuff from Taylor as always. We have a great slew of interviews for you coming tomorrow, including State Senator Bruce Tarr. So be sure to tune in, and we hope you all have a great Thursday night. We'll see you tomorrow.